Now, this is another story from long ago, and it came to this country by way of some islands off of Africa. And this is a story about riddles. You see, there was once a king who had a daughter who was very, very smart. And the thing that she loved most in the world was riddles. She would ask riddles. She would answer people's riddles. She was the best riddler in the whole world, as anybody knew. Well, the king offered a huge reward for anybody who could either answer one of her riddles or ask her a riddle that she couldn't answer. Most people couldn't win. And so many people tried, the king put in a penalty. He said, if you ask her a riddle and she can answer it, or if she asks you a riddle and you can't answer it, then not only do you not get the prize, but you lose your head. Well, that cut down on the number of people willing to play the riddle game, and the princess was getting really bored. But Emmanuel, he thought he was good at riddles. Now, his mother didn't want him to try the contest because she didn't want him to lose his head. But he said, no, 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 the prize is so big, it would make us rich for life. Wouldn't you like to be rich? And his mother said, not if it means you losing your head. He said, I'm going anyway. I'm going to get on my donkey and ride to where the king and his daughter live and try the riddle game. Well, Emmanuel's mother thought, having your head cut off would be terrible, and I don't want my boy to suffer pain like that. So, without telling him what she was doing, she made up a little batch of sweet cakes and put a deadly poison in them. And she gave him bread for him and for his donkey, and she said, now these sweet cakes, don't you go eating them unless you lose the contest. If you lose the contest, right away you eat one of these sweet cakes. Well, Emmanuel thought that was a strange thing to say, but he thought, okay, I'm not going to eat any of those sweet cakes unless I lose the contest. Well, he got up on his donkey and they started riding across the countryside. But after a while, both he and his donkey got hungry and they started eating some of the bread. And then he thought, well, I said I wouldn't eat any of the sweet cakes, but maybe my donkey, Paul, would like some. Paul, here, taste some of this. And Paul, his donkey, licked out the sweet cake out of his hand, and a few seconds later, Paul, the donkey, dropped dead. What happened? Oh no, my donkey died. And he looked, and he couldn't figure out what was wrong, but his donkey was just dead. And he got his pack and started to walk away, but then he noticed buzzards flying overhead. And they swooped down, and he was going to chase them away from poor Paul, but he didn't have a way of burying his donkey, and he thought maybe it was best that the other critters eat him. And these buzzards, 3 of them, came swooping down, and they started to bite into the body of that donkey the way they'd bite into the dead bodies of any other animal they found. And all 3 of those buzzards dropped dead. Well, that's strange, said Emmanuel. And he thought, maybe I can do something with those buzzards. And he tied them together and put them over his back and carried them along. And he came to where there were a group of men gathered around a campfire. Now these men looked mean. They were a band of thieves, 7 of them, and they looked like they'd been robbing people and doing terrible things. And they saw Emmanuel coming along with those 3 buzzards on his back, and they said, sell us those birds. We want to roast them because we're hungry. And he said, all right, sure. and he sold them the birds, and they began cooking the birds. And Emmanuel walked back into the forest a ways, but kept an eye on them. And sure enough, when they started eating those buzzards, bam, all 7 of those robbers just dropped dead. Well, he thought to himself, well, I think I've got a riddle now that the princess can't answer. Cake kills Paul, Paul kills 3, 3 kills 7. No, that's not quite right. Cake kills Paul, then Paul kills 3, then 3 kills 7. Sure, that's a riddle. She won't be able to answer that. And so he walked the rest of the way to where the king and his daughter lived. And he knocked on the door, and one of the king's servants opened the door, and Emmanuel said, I've come to challenge the princess to a riddle contest. And everybody inside the door went, ooh, because they knew how scary that would be, because if he didn't win, he'd have his head cut off. And the king came out and said, are you sure? I mean, you know the terms of this, right? You look kind of young to have your head cut off. But Emmanuel said, oh, I'm willing to challenge the princess. All right, is she going to ask you a riddle, or are you going to ask her one? I'm going to ask the princess a riddle and ask her to solve it. Well, that sounded like real entertainment. And so everybody got together in the courtyard. And the princess came out, and she had her best dress on, and she was ready to answer the question. And Emmanuel said, all right, here's the riddle. Cake kills Paul, then Paul kills 3, then 3 kills 7. And the princess thought and thought and thought. Cake kills Paul. But if it kills him, how is he going to kill somebody else? And how is what he kills going to kill somebody else after that? And finally, the princess had to admit, I don't know the answer to that riddle. You're going to get a reward, I guess. And the king said, not so fast. That's a big reward you got coming. But we want to hear the answer to the riddle first. And Emmanuel said, well, I fed a cake to my donkey, and he died, and the buzzards that came down to eat him died. And when a group of 7 robbers ate those 3 buzzards, they died. That's pretty good, but for a reward this size, I want you to pass another test. Well, but I thought it was just a riddle contest, said Emmanuel. No, this one's really good. You're going to go out and feed some rabbits. Feed rabbits? But that doesn't sound so hard. Oh, you got to take these 3 rabbits way up on top of that hill over there and let them go and eat their fill, and at the end of a week, bring them back all nice and healthy. But if I let them go up there, they'll get away. That's up to you to figure out. You're so smart with that riddle, I'm sure you'll figure something. Well, Emmanuel walked out with the cage of rabbits, but he had no idea how he was going to keep them safe and alive and healthy, much less get them back to him. As he was walking slowly toward that hill, he ran into a little old lady. Now, some said she was a witch, and some said she was just really smart. And she looked at Emmanuel and said, "Why do you have such a sad face?" And Emmanuel told her about the rabbits and how he had to keep them safe for a week up on top of the hill. And she said, "I've got something that might help. Here, take this whistle. It's a whistle that rabbits can hear. And if you blow on it, they'll come running up to you. You just have to remember to give them food when they come to you, and they'll come back every time. Well, that sounded like a great idea. And they tested it right there. And those rabbits came back to him when the whistle blew, and he fed them, and got them into the cage, and took them up on top of the hill. And he let them loose, and they ate their fill, and he blew on the whistle and came back to him, and he put them in their cage for the night. Every day he would let the rabbits out and then blow on the whistle, and they would come back and put them in the cage. Well, the king was beginning to get worried, and he thought, maybe somebody better check on that boy and those rabbits. And the princess said, I'll go. And the princess put on a disguise to make her look like somebody other than the princess. At least she thought. She was still so pretty and princess-like, though, that anybody could figure it out. Well, she walked and walked until she got to the top of that hill, and she said, Oh my, look at those lovely rabbits. Are they yours? And Emmanuel said, Well, I'm taking care of them for the king. Would you sell me a rabbit? That spotted one over there looks so nice. I'd love to have him for a pet. And Emmanuel said, I can't sell those. Those are the king's rabbits. Well, I'll give you a bag full of money. No, but all right, I'll sell you the spotted rabbit, but you have to give me the necklace you're wearing. The necklace? Well, all right. And the princess, still in her disguise, even though Emmanuel had figured out who she was, she took off her necklace and she traded it for the spotted rabbit. And she put it in the little basket she was carrying and started to walk off down the hill. Well, before she had got out of earshot, Emmanuel blew on the whistle, and that rabbit jumped out of the basket without her seeing and ran back up the hill, and he made sure to pet the rabbit and give it some special food. Well, she got back to the palace, and she said, I went up there, and I got one of the rabbits away from him so he'll fail the test. And she opened up the basket, and there was no rabbit inside the basket. Oh, it got away. But he still won't have all 3 rabbits. Said the king. He's pretty smart. I wonder if that's so. I'll go up, said the queen. I want to see this young man and see what he's doing with the rabbits. And so the queen went up the next day, and she disguised herself, but she still looked like a queen in disguise. And she got all the way up to the top of the hill, and there she saw Emmanuel and 1, 2, 3 rabbits. He got it back. He must have tricked my daughter. And so the queen said, Ah, young man, those are such nice rabbits. Would you sell me one? And Emmanuel said, Well, those rabbits belong to the king. I can't just sell you one of these. And she said, But I'll give you lots and lots of money for one. I especially like that one with the spots on its ears. Oh, said Emmanuel. All right, but not for money. You have to give me the bracelet that you're wearing on your wrists. Well, said the queen, I'll do that. And she took off the bracelet and traded it for the rabbit that she had chosen. And she put it into her bundle and started off down the hill. Well, before she got out of earshot, Emmanuel blew on his whistle, and that rabbit escaped from that bundle and went running back up the hill. And he petted it and gave it special food, and that rabbit was very happy to pull such a joke on the queen. She got back down the hill and said, He had gotten that rabbit back from the princess, but now I have, and she opened the bundle, and there was no rabbit inside. I have no rabbit. He tricked me too. Well, said the king, This fellow is trickier than we thought, but I'm going to go get a rabbit. And so he made a basket like the one the princess had, but he thought he must have gotten that rabbit to sneak out of the basket somehow. I'm going to build mine so that it locks shut. And he got the basket ready and he went up and disguised himself. And so instead of a princess in disguise or a queen in disguise, now it was a king in disguise. And he looked so magnificent walking up that hill with his basket. And he got to the top of the hill and said, "Ahem, young man, would you sell me one of those rabbits?" And Emmanuel said, "I'm sorry, but these rabbits belong to the king. I can't just sell one of them." "Ahem, ahem, ahem. I'm a wealthy man. I can give you quite a bit of money. I want that rabbit there, the one with the very fluffy tail." "I'm sorry, but these rabbits belong to the king." I insist you sell me a rabbit." "All right," said Emmanuel, "but not for money. You have to give me the ring off your finger." Well, the ring that the king had was his royal signet ring, and he hadn't realized he was still wearing it in his disguise. He'd be in big trouble if it became known that he'd given away this ring, but he wanted to get that rabbit to fool Emmanuel and make him break his promise. So he said, Here, take the ring. Give me the rabbit." And so Emmanuel gave him the rabbit. He put it in his basket. And without Emmanuel seeing, he locked the basket. And so as the king walked down the hill, Emmanuel blew the whistle, and no rabbit came back up. He blew the whistle harder, and no rabbit came back up. And he thought to himself, "Oh no, he's tricked me somehow." So the king took the rabbit back down the hill and put it in a pen, but didn't put in a lot of food. He wanted this rabbit to lose weight before the end of the week so that it was different from the other two. And so this rabbit didn't get fancy food and didn't get petted and didn't eat the wild food. It just got lettuce. By the end of the week, Emmanuel brought the other two rabbits back down the hill, but before he got back to the king's doorway, he saw the rabbit with the fluffy tail in a pen by itself. And it looked like it had lost weight, but it was still there. So he quietly sneaked over, and he opened the pen, and he got the rabbit back into the cage with the other two. And he walked back inside the king's palace and said to the king, "I'm back with the rabbits." "Well," said the king, "let's see the rabbits." And Emmanuel opened the cage, and out came the rabbits. Two very fluffy, very plump rabbits, and one a little bit thinner. And the king said, Two of them look fat and healthy, but what happened to that third one?" "Well," said Emmanuel, "that third one's been kind of sick." "You lie," said the king. "You're going to forfeit all your prize award, unless you can fill a bag with your lies." And the king got out a big bag. "Now you tell lies into this bag, and I'll decide if it's full." "All right. Well, see, what really happened was, after I took the rabbits up to the top of the hill, I was taking care of them real good when the princess came up in disguise and tried to buy one of the rabbits off of me." "You lie," said the princess. "That's going into the bag," said Emmanuel. "And she even gave me this necklace from her own neck to pay for one of the rabbits." "That's a terrible lie," said the princess. "That's going into the bag too." "Well then, after that rabbit just happened to come back to me, the queen came up in disguise. What? What? Said the queen. That's terrible. That's a lie. I'd never do a thing like that. And she gave me the bracelet off of her own arm to pay for one of the rabbits. Oh, that's a lie. Those are going into the bag too. And then, after that rabbit just happened to come back, why, the king himself came all the way up the hill and gave me... Wait, said the king. The bag is full. And so it was that Emmanuel quietly handed the king back his ring without anybody else noticing. And he got the money from the riddle contest and an extra prize for taking care of those rabbits, just because the king didn't want him talking about that signet ring. And so it was that Emmanuel went home pretty rich, and he and his mama lived happily ever after, and she never did explain about those poisoned sweet cakes, not even after he told her the riddle. And that was the story of Emmanuel and his riddle.